You don't need 150 IQ to do what I do. Thank God. You don't need 140. You don't need 135. You may need 115 or something like that. But you do need discipline.
I advise students, as much as possible, look for the job that you would take if you didn't need a job. I mean, don't sleepwalk through life. If something goes wrong, if you find yourself working for the wrong employer and they're doing things you don't approve of, or they're not treating you fairly, the world isn't over yet. You just go out and find somebody else.
Need motivation?
Watch a Top 10 with Believe Nation.
Top 10, I got a top 10. Got my motivation high for my top 10. Gotta learn from the wise women and men all my life. Like na 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 na. For my top 10, top 10, na 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 na. This one's for my top 10.
Hey, it's Evan Carmichael, and I make these videos because you are probably the most ambitious person in your circle, but you know you're capable of more. And you get that push by surrounding yourself with the best. So today, let's learn from one of the best, Warren Buffett, and my take on his top 10 rules for success. Enjoy. Okay, let's kick it off with rule number 1. Have discipline.
You don't need 150 IQ to do what I do. Thank God. You don't need 140. You don't need 135. You may need 115 or something like that. But you do need discipline. You have to wait until you see the fat pitch to swing at. Because investing is a no-called strike game. If I were a baseball player and I only liked pitches 2 inches above my navel, some guy could learn that and he could pitch me, 3 or 4 inches below that, and I get called out on strikes because I never find a pitch I like. You can get called out on strikes in baseball. You have to swing at pitches that you don't even necessarily like, particularly after the count gets to 2 strikes. In business, you don't have to swing at anything. You can sit there and the paper says General Motors at 68, or it says General Electric at 115, or it says General Dynamics at 63. And if you don't like those prices, you don't have to swing. You can wait there day after day after day after day, and there are no called strikes. Now, when you swing, when you decide to buy something, then, if you swing and miss, it's a strike. But it's a marvelous game to be in because there are no called strikes, and you can simply wait for that one time in a month or 6 months or a year or 2 or 3 years when you really know what you're doing, where you like the price, where you like the people running the business, and then you swing, and you only need a few swings in your lifetime.
Rule number 2, embrace failure.
How do you deal with failure? And what's your advice to young entrepreneurs like me in this case, especially with regards to failure and how to approach it?
Yeah, well, if you fail, you really do dust yourself off and get right back in. I mean, you're going to fail at some things. You're going to have some human relationships that don't work out. Fairly significant number of people get divorced. I mean, that's a very big decision to have turn out badly. But I think if you study almost everybody and read Kay's book, Personal History, and everybody fails at some things. I mean, particularly when you're younger. I mean, you do have less experience in evaluating humans and just knowing about whatever it may be businesses. But it is not fatal. I mean, if you're healthy and you live in this, particularly living in this country, there's going to be an opportunity that comes along. I got turned down for the Harvard Business School when I got out of the University of Nebraska. And I remember, I went to Chicago to get interviewed. This is when you traveled on the train, and so I spent 10 hours going there. And this fellow looked at me, and about 10 minutes he said, forget it, Bell. And now I got to go back on the train 10 hours and think, what am I going to tell my dad? What am I going to tell my dad? I mean, my dad always told me I could do anything, and everything. Now I've just gotten turned down, But it turned out to be one of the best things that ever happened to me, because then I went to Columbia where Ben Graham was. In fact, it probably even affected who I married, because I took a 1-year course at Columbia instead of 2 years at Harvard, and she might have found some other guy during that time. And almost everything in my life that looked like a failure has either usually it's turned into a success. I mean, the world isn't over. If you have bad luck in health, that's tough. I mean, there's just no getting away. I've been lucky on that. But the other kind of things, if you're healthy and you're bright and you've got decades ahead of you, if something goes wrong, if you find yourself working for the wrong employer and they're doing things you don't approve of, or they're not treating you fairly, the world isn't over yet. You just go out and find somebody else.
Rule number 3, focus on your inner scorecard.
I got an awful lot of good advice from my dad, and he didn't lay it on me. I mean, he just, you picked it up from him, but there was never any of this, do this, do that type of thing at all. But I think he really taught me that it's more important in terms of what's on your inner scorecard than your outer scorecard. I mean, some people get in a position where they're thinking all of the time of what the world's going to think of this or that instead of what they themselves think about. And if your inner scorecard, if you're comfortable with that, I think you're going to have a pretty happy life. And I think the people that strive too much for the outer scorecard sometimes find that it's a little hollow when they get all through.
Rule number 4, read biographies.
I should mention one thing about reading. It was at the library here at Columbia that I wish I spent probably more time than any other student. I lived there practically. But I pulled the book out there, happened to be Who's Who in America, and it told me something about my professor, Benjamin Graham. And then I looked up and I went to the library and I said, I want to learn more about this because I learned this over here. That changed my whole life. We own Geico now because of that librarian directing me to some other book and then following through on that. It's the chance. I read about 1/5 the pace that Bill does, but I still spend 5 or 6 hours a day reading. I mean, you can learn so much. I particularly love biography. Just to be able to live the lives of these people that have been so extraordinary, the lessons and the discouragements they face, just everything about it. So you can't get enough of reading.
Also, if you want to have more self-belief and more self-confidence, I have designed a free training program just for you, where every day for the next 254 days, I'll send you an email with an unlisted video to help you boost your confidence. The science says it can take up to 254 days of consecutive action to build a habit, and so I want you to build the habit of self-belief and self-confidence. It's 100% free. The link to join is in the description below.
Investing in yourself is the best thing you can do. Anything that improves your own talents. Like, nobody can take it away from you. They can run up huge deficits and the dollar can become worth far less. You can have all kinds of things happen. It's important to associate with people that are better than yourself.
They made us do all these crazy things to get out of ourselves, and so we stood on tables and did all kinds of things.
Rule number 5, think long term.
How do you decide what you invest your time and money in?
Yeah, well, I like to find businesses that have good economics. Now, what are good economics? Well, good economics are a business that has some kind of a moat around it that makes its product or its service or its location or something a little more desirable to the customer than any other sort of comparable product. The number one candy bar in the last 30 or 40 years has been Snickers. People don't fool around with different candy bars. They fool around with different length dresses, they fool around, with all kinds of things, but they don't fool around with candy bars because they figure, they're going to go in and lay out 50 cents or whatever it is and put it in their mouth. And they're not going to, for 50 cents and putting it in your mouth, I mean, you're not going to say, I'll lay out 45 cents and put something else in my mouth. So you find that very stable. And we like businesses that we think we can figure out where they're going to be in 10 or 15 years. I don't know where the information technology businesses are going to be in 10 or 15 years. I know where Snickers bars are going to be in 10 or 15 years. They're going to be selling just about the way they do now. I know where Wrigley's gum is going to be in 10 or 15 years. There's not going to be a lot of innovation in chewing gum. The internet's not going to cause people to quit chewing gum either. I mean, Gates may think so, but I don't think so. But it's predictability regarding the sustainability of a competitive advantage, something special about a product.
Rule number 6, work on your attitude.
You both have several managers working under you, so I was wondering what are some steps that a new entrant into the job market can take to accelerate their journey towards an upper level management position?
Yeah, well, one thing I will tell you that I didn't realize when I was getting out of school is how much the unusual person will jump out at you. I mean, and it isn't because they got 200 IQs or anything like that. It's really because of just how they behave, what they bring, the energy they bring, the commitment they bring, the quality of how they do things, how they treat the people around them, all kinds of things. But
you will jump out much more than you might anticipate. One of the things you would want to be sure to do is, whether you like it or not, get very comfortable, it may take a while, with public speaking, for example. I mean, that's an asset that will last you 50 or 60 years, and it's a liability if you don't like doing it and are uncomfortable doing it. That also will last you 50 or 60 years, and it's a necessary skill. But a lot of the skills are just human skills. If you get the best out of people around you, that's a rare talent, and it doesn't correlate with IQ. It correlates with an attitude and toward the world and toward other people. And it's a talent that if you work at early and you're really conscious about it, you don't have to show up other people. You don't have to be smarter than they are or anything else. You want to bring out the best in them. It will pay huge dividends.
Rule number 7, don't sleepwalk through life.
If you were to do it all over again, you're in our shoes, what industry would that be in? Where would you start your own business today?
I'd do the same thing. Yeah. I mean, for one thing, I'd be a failure at anything else probably. I mean, I'm not gonna. No, I mean, I had fun when I was in my 20s, my 30s. Now I'm 86 and I'm having fun. And so I advise students as much as possible, look for the job that you would take if you didn't need a job. I mean, don't sleepwalk through life, and don't say it's all going to be great. I'll do this and I'll do that, and I'm just marking time till I get to be older. That, as I've told people, that's like saving up sex for your old age. I mean, it just is not it is not a good idea. Yeah.
What are you urging them to do?
I'll explain it. Just what I'm talking about. Now, you really want to be doing what you love doing. And you can't necessarily find it on your first job. Right. But don't give up before you find it.
Rule number 8, get ahead of the game.
It is always being ahead of the game rather than getting behind the game. It's saving a little, no matter how you do it. I mean, I delivered papers, I worked at Penny's, I sold golf balls, I had a pinball machine around. I did a lot of things that enabled me to accumulate about $10,000 by the time I got out of school. 10,000 doesn't go as far now as it did then, but having anything so that you're ahead of the game and not getting behind the game is enormously important. I mean, just, if you're going to run a 100-yard dash against a bunch of people in life, if you can figure it out so that when the gun goes off, you're 10 or 15 yards ahead instead of 10 or 15 yards behind, it's going to make an enormous difference in how that race comes out. So having some net resources doesn't make much difference whether they're in stocks or bonds, in my view, but and not having debt when that gun goes off when you get out of school is a huge plus over being behind the game. And it may come from delivering a paper out in the morning, it may come from part-time work someplace, but put aside a few dollars for yourself so that when the time comes and you enter the workforce, you're ahead of the game and not behind. And then once you get there, don't get behind by buying a whole lot of things that you figure you're going to pay for someday while you're paying 20% interest in between.
Rule number 9, choose who you associate with.
You will move in the direction of the people that you associate with. So it's important to associate with people that are better than yourself, and actually the most important decision many of you make, not all of you, will be the spouse you choose. Right. And you want to associate with people who are the kind of person you'd like to be. You'll move in that direction, and the most important person by far in that respect is your spouse. I can't overemphasize how important that is, and you're right. The friends you have, they will form you as you go through life, and make some good friends, keep them for the rest of your life, but have them be people that you admire as well as like.
And rule number 10, the last one before a very special bonus clip, is have fun.
Well,
there we go.
Touting.
Pretty nice.
Can you imagine this? I mean, this is the way to spend your time.
I think this is better than the mattress I sleep on.
I wouldn't fool around with computers when I could be in this position. I mean.
Can you remember buying your first mattress, Warren?
Well, I didn't do very much of the purchasing in our family. I can't recall ever buying anything, actually. Check this man's credit and see if he's good.
Now I've got a special bonus clip that I think you're gonna enjoy, but before that, it's time for the question of the day. I wanna know, what was your single biggest takeaway from this video and your plan of action for the next week? When you watch something and get motivated and just get inspired, you have a 35% chance of actually following through. But when you get motivated and then you actually create an action plan for what you're gonna do, you increase it from 35% to 91% chance of you actually following through. And when you share your plan publicly, that jumps to 95% chance of following through. So I want that for you. I want to know your single biggest takeaway from this video and your plan of action for the next week. Put it down in the comments below so I can celebrate you.
Is there a meaningful distinction to be drawn between making money out of investment and making money out of speculation? It's always a bet, isn't it? It's always a gamble.
No, it isn't a gamble. There is a real distinction. Basically, it's subjective, but an investment attitude, you look to the asset itself to produce the return. So if I buy a farm and I expect it to produce $80 an acre for me in terms of its revenue from corn and soybeans, and it costs me $600, I'm looking at the return from the farm itself. I'm not looking at the price of the farm every day or every week or every year. On the other hand, if I buy a stock and I hope it goes up next week, to me that's pure speculation.
If you want 10 more awesome rules from Warren Buffett, check out the video right there next to me. I think you'll enjoy it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
It's very important to have the right framework. You need to have an approach to investing that's sound. And Graham's approach is simple.